Sorry. Okay, so now this meeting is being recorded. And I'll just briefly say again, we are doing chapter 39. It appears at face value to be a depressing chapter of Tehilim, but we know that when David HaMelech started putting together the Tehilim, there were a lot more than 150 chapters. And David HaMelech chose a chapter for every single occasion, and put them together and edited them and did whatever he had to do. And for whatever reason, David HaMelech included this chapter of Tehillim. So the commentaries discuss what is it? What are we supposed to see in it? And the common denominator of all the various commentaries that I saw say that this is not a depressing chapter, but rather it's a chapter of reflection. It's like almost what man search for meaning, or what we're supposed to do every day is make a cheshbon hanefesh, to do an introspection, ask ourselves what life is about, what are we achieving, where are we going, and that's more the mood of this chapter of Tehillim. So let's see it inside. It says, "Lamnatzeach lidusun mizmor David." To the conductor, to dusun.
What number?
We are on chapter 39. This to the conductor, Lidusun, which we'll explain now, Mizmor David, a song by David. So most of the commentaries agree that Yedusun was a Levi. He had 6 sons. And the way that it worked in those days is that there were 3 groups of Leviim. There was Asaph and there was Haman, their 3 families. And they sang in the Beis HaMikdash on a rotation basis. And so now we have all chapters of Tehillim that begin Lamnatzeach Lidusun were given to Yedusun. He would be the one who would chant them. He would supervise when his sons sang in the Beis HaMikdash, and this was one of his family's Tehillim. Another opinion is that Yedusun is a musical instrument. And it's a particular musical instrument that was designed and played only by the Yedusun family. So Yedusun and his sons invented this machine, this music thing, and they used it. They played on it, and they named it the Yedusun. And a third explanation is that the word Yedusun contains in it das. Das you might recognize from Dati, or from Kedat Moshe that we say at a wedding. Das means laws, but it doesn't only mean Torah laws. Das and din often mean decrees that have been placed on us by other people. So whenever we see a chapter of Tehillim that begins Lidusun, Lamnatzat Lidusun, it's talking about a time that's difficult for us Jewish nation, and it's because of the various laws, decrees, plans that the outside world has for us, and so it seems that fits very well with the rest of this chapter. That it's David HaMelech saying, "I'm going through a really hard time at the moment, and this is how I face it. This is what I need to do." So he says, Amarti, I said to myself, Eshmera drachai mechate. I'm going to guard myself from sinning. Vilshani, with my mouth. Eshmera lefi machsaim. I'm going to guard myself by muzzling my mouth. Ba'ad rasha lenegdi. While the wicked or the difficulty is still in front of me. So interesting wording David HaMelech uses. He says, I'm going to guard myself from sinning, Bil Shani, with my tongue. And immediately all the commentaries say the first step in guarding oneself from sinning is to guard the tongue. The tongue is the one organ of ours that makes us sin, prevents us from sinning. All of that has to do with the tongue, which we'll discuss a little bit more in a minute. So he wants to prevent himself from sinning, and here he's speaking specifically about sinning with his mouth. And again, Rashi comments over here and says what David is saying here is that no matter how much suffering I have, I will not moan about it. I won't complain to Hashem about it. I won't say it's unfair. I will not question it. I will accept it. In the words of the great commentaries, I will accept all my yisurim, all my sufferings, ba'ahava, with love, and accept. And we'll see that David Melech actually says this at the end of this chapter. He says, "I'll accept my suffering," and here he says it with one step further. I won't question it. And the commentaries discuss this, that like it's one thing to accept suffering, but to accept suffering and not question it. Like, we're human, okay? At the end of the day, we human beings, and when Hashem isn't treating us the way we want to be treated by Hashem, when the world isn't treating us the way we want the world to be treating us, should we not question it? Should we not respond? And Rabbi Tversky speaks a lot about this and says, we've got to be careful not to become skeptical. We've got to be careful not to become cynical. And even in our words, not like, so I maybe this like really shot out at me, because I often like feel a little irreverent and want to say like a strange comment like, "What's Hashem doing? What does he think he's doing? Didn't ask me." And according to this, it's not okay. That's not okay to do this. David HaMelech says the best way to face things is to be quiet. And he is telling us that the best way to control ourselves is to keep our mouths quiet, no matter what. He uses two different words to say keeping quiet or speech. He speaks about lashoni, the tongue, and then he speaks about lefi machzon, the peh, the mouth. And the Malbim comments about the difference between lashoni and peh, from the word here, lefi. He says that lashoni, our tongues, what we use when we've thought and planned. So it's a thought out response. I'm going to make a nasty comment, but I thought about it beforehand. I'm going to make a not okay comment, but I thought about it beforehand. Or the other way, positively. I'm going to say something good, I'm going to say something positive, and it's going to be something that I thought through and I know what I'm saying. And peh, just talking about our mouth, is talking about unthought out speech, right? Things that just fall out of our mouths when we open our mouths and things come out, and afterwards sometimes even we are surprised. So this is the difference is what that David HaMelech says. We've got to watch out for the things we think about and for the things that we just say. It's interesting, you might recognize the words lefi machzon or machzon peh. It became very popular for people to have what they call machzon peh, a muzzling of the mouth. Give themselves a few hours every day or every week or whatever, where they say, I'm having a machzon peh, I'm having a closed mouth for this amount of time, and between this time and this time, I won't speak lashon hara. I'll try not to speak anything bad. There are many people who have the custom to have their Shabbos table or their Yontif table. They call it a machzon peh. That at least at their Shabbos table, they're careful about the things that come out of their mouths. And I find it quite interesting that what are we careful of? It's not saying that you only have to be careful about not thinking to say bad things, but even be careful not to just let things fall out of our mouths. Don't say things without thinking. And David HaMelech is saying over here, I'm keeping quiet, even though I'm suffering so badly. I'm keeping quiet, and I'm not saying anything negative now. The Medrash talks about the power of the tongue, and the Medrash tells a story. Probably I've told you before, when I was a little girl, I had it in a children's storybooks. I love it, and every time I come across it, I have to tell it again. So the Medrash says that there was a king, a Persian king, who was very, very ill. And the doctors told him that the only thing that would help him is if he drank the milk from a lioness. But no human beings know how to milk lionesses. One man says he has a plan, and he undertook to do it. So he took 10 goats, and off he went to the lion's den. And he started standing very far away and throwing a goat in, and every day he would throw another goat at the lioness, until finally she trusted him enough, and she allowed him to milk her. And he goes with his precious little bottle of lion's milk, and he's going home. And on the way home, he stops and he rests at the side of the road, and he falls asleep. And in his sleep, he hears all his different organs discussing who was the one who gets credit for getting the milk. So the legs say, it's definitely me. I walked you here. Right? And the hands say, are you crazy? It was me. I'm the one who milked the lioness. And each one of the eyes claim that they're the ones who showed him the way. Someone else claims he's the one who made him think of it. And all the different organs are arguing about who gets credit for milking the lioness. And the tongue says, hey, it's me. I'm the strongest of all the organs. I'm the king of all the organs of the body. And all the other organs start laughing at the tongue. You're a soft little piece of meat. You don't even have a bone like other parts. You have there's nothing. What are you so proud of that you could say that you the best and the most important of all organs? And the tongue says, I'll show you. I'll teach you a lesson. Off the man, he wakes up, he goes off back to the king, and he comes to the king and he hands him this precious little bottle, and he says, here, your majesty, I hope this dog's milk makes you well. And the king goes berserk. Okay, dog's milk? I sent you to get lion's milk and you got dog's milk? Calls in the soldiers and says, hang him. Okay, not interested in this guy. And there he's lying in a dungeon, and now all the body parts are going for him. And each one thinks, what did you say? Why did you say dog's milk, right? We risked our lives. We found a nursing lion. We waited there for all those days. And you came back and you said dog's milk? So he said, I told you, the tongue is the strongest of all the organs of the body, and I proved it to you. So they said, well, now prove it the other way. Go and get pardon and explain yourself. And so he gets permission to come before the king one more time. But before he goes, he says to his body organs, he says, if I manage to get us saved, you all agree that I am the king of the body. And they go in front of the king, and he tells the king the whole story, that in Hebrew, kalbiyah can be said as a lioness, a nursing lion, or it could be a dog. And he didn't say it so clearly, and that's why he didn't hear it. And test it. You'll see that when you test it, it will work just as lion's milk will work. And the king listened, and he was quite desperate for lion's milk, and so he agreed to try. And he said, if it works, then you are saved. And sure enough, it was lion's milk, and so the king got better, and the body agreed that it will always hold the tongue as king of the body. And so it seems like a cute little story, nicely made into a children's book. But the truth is, it's a deep story for us, because our tongues are the king of our bodies, and the things that come out of our mouths, whether they're thought out or they just fall out of our mouths, either way, that's what actually rules us. It rules our relationships. It rules our relationship with Hashem, with our families, with our friends, with everyone. The tongue is truly the thing of our body, the ruler of our bodies. It carries on. He says, "Ne'elamti dumiyah." I became absolutely quiet. I was even quiet about good, because my pain was overwhelming me. And so David HaMelech is explaining in how much pain he was, how harassed he felt, like that he couldn't manage. He couldn't manage at all. And he says, not only did he not speak bad, but he says, I didn't even speak good. commentaries explain that when a person has got so much to say, they also have to be careful about not saying good, because when they're in that state, they don't know what will slip out and how. And so David HaMelech was careful. Not only did he not complain, but he was absolutely quiet. And we have this in a few places. In the examples of this in the Torah, we have where Yaakov Avinu has just heard that his daughter has been raped by Shechem, and it says Vehecharish Yaakov. Yaakov was quiet. So, like, you wonder, he was quiet. He just heard the worst news, and he's just being quiet. And over there, the commentaries explain that Yaakov is the one of our fathers who understood what happens when you say something without thinking it through enough. When he heard Lavan accuse him of having avodah zarah in his household, he quickly said, "Don't accuse me of that. If that would be true, whoever would have the trophim would die." And it's because of this that his beloved Rachel died before he came into Eretz Yisrael. And from then on, Yaakov was extremely careful not to say anything when he was filled with emotion. Not good emotion, not bad emotion. Yaakov said that when a person is over emotional, they say things which they may not know exactly. Another example we have of this from the Torah is when Eliezer goes to look for a wife for Yitzchak, and he finds kind of Rivka, and he wants to take her back home, and he says to Lavan and Basuel, her father and brother, like, can I, give me permission to take this girl back home? And they say, Lo nuchal ledaber, we're not able to answer you. Tov vara, good or bad. It's such a weird response. We can't answer you good or bad. So what they were saying is that it's not up to us. We know it's not up to us. But the lesson and the reason that the Torah writes it that way is particularly when it's talking about shidduchim, but in other things as well. We have to be careful not to speak taiv vara, good and bad. So bad, it's obvious. We shouldn't speak bad about someone. There are certain times where it's halacha to tell bad. So if you know that someone is a serial murderer, then you most definitely warn the family before they go into shidduch with the person. But traits that we possibly don't like, bad things or whatever, that's not going to spoil a marriage, we're supposed to keep quiet. We're not supposed to share. But Tov, you would think, speaking good, of course we must share that. Okay, that is going to be so encouraging. And the commentaries explain to us that what I think is good and what you think is good may not necessarily be the same. And so we have to be extremely careful when we're talking about another person. Of course, not to say bad, but even to be careful about the good that we say, and how we say it. So it reminded me. I had this long discussion with my husband. We often sit at main tables at events, especially if you remember, long time ago there was like a long main table, and you sat on a stage and you saw everybody, and you sat on the stage through all the speeches. And at weddings and bar mitzvahs, often speeches are not really suitable for the rabbi to be sitting and listening to. And one of the things that my husband trained himself in was that he didn't even smile at jokes that were not appropriate. He just sat deadpan. Okay. Obviously, as soon as inappropriate joke was made, everybody turned to look and see the rabbi's reaction, and he was just sitting straight faced. And came to a point one day there was a beautiful speech, and the man was telling really funny jokes, and my husband was sitting deadpan. I said to him, "Yes, you're allowed to laugh. They clean jokes." And he said to me, "I've trained myself. I don't laugh at wedding and bar mitzvah speeches. Nothing." And I was thinking, this is what David HaMelech is saying. He's saying, we even have to guard ourselves. We even have to be careful about the good that's around. He says, continues, and he says in Pasuk Daled, things are changing a little in this Pasuk. He says, Cham libi b'kirbi, my heart is hot inside of me. V'hagigi si'ar eish, my thoughts are alight dibarti bilshoni, and now I decided I could speak out. And what does he say? He says, Hodi'eni Hashem kitzi. Hashem, let me know when is my end, when is my time. Umidas yomai mahi. And the length of my days, what is it? Eid'ah me chadal ani. Because then I'll know when this pain will stop. So he's asking Hashem, how long is the suffering going to go on? And the Medrash explains that if a person knows how long a certain suffering is going to go on, we can tolerate it because we know it's coming. We know it's coming to its end. And the Medrash gives an example. If a father says to his son, "I'm going to give you 3 smacks," then the child can tolerate it because they know it's 3 smacks and then they're done. But if they have no idea how many times this angry father is going to smack them, even the first one is intolerable. So that's how the Medrash explains it. The Gemara in Shabbos tells an interesting story, which you've probably also heard in some form or other, but says that David HaMelech turned to Hashem and he said, Hodi'eni Hashem kitzi. Hashem, I need to know, when's my time? How long am I going to live? And Hashem replies to him, no man knows his end. So David says, so then just tell me which season I'm going to die in. And Hashem responds, no man is told. And so David says, what day of the week am I going to die? And Hashem says, on a Shabbos. I'm going to die on a Shabbos. And David HaMelech says, that's terrible to die on a Shabbos. Let me rather die on a Sunday, the day after Shabbos. And Hashem responds and he says, no, on the Sunday after that Shabbos that you die is already the reign of Shlomo HaMelech, and not taking away one day of his kingdom. So David HaMelech says, okay, let me die the day before that Shabbos, on the Friday. And Hashem says, no, one day of Torah and mitzvahs in this world is worth more than 1,000 burnt offerings. You can't die a day early. So David HaMelech spent every single Shabbos learning, and in fact, that's why we have the custom of Milav Malka. One of the reasons that we have a custom of having a meal on Motzei Shabbos and calling it, many people are careful to call it Seudas David. It's the meal of David. It says that every Motzei Shabbos, David HaMelech would party and he would say, okay, I know I have another week, right? I didn't die this Shabbos. I'm good for another week. Why was David interested in knowing his case, in knowing when he was going to die? It was, first of all, he felt that if he would know exactly when he was going to die, he would live his life better. He felt that if he knew when his end was, it would give him motivation, it would give him inspiration to live every day better. But what he was actually asking more deeply than asking, when am I going to die? He was asking, what is my purpose in this world? What is my case? What am I supposed to be accomplishing while I'm in this world? And how do we know that? From the fact in the next sentence, he says, Umidas yamai, the measurement of my days. He doesn't say the days, the time of the amount of my days, but he says the measure of my days. What is he saying? That for every single one of us, and Hashem has told us to him clearly, every single day something has to be accomplished. Today has to be a better day than yesterday. We have to have achieved something today that we didn't do yesterday. And this is what he's asking Hashem. He says, I want to know my time, in other words, when I'm going to die. But even more than that, I want to know midas yamai. Am I accomplishing what I'm meant to accomplish today? Am I doing what I was supposed to do today? And the Rebbe actually speaks about it. He says, these are questions that the reason David HaMelech put it into Tehilim is because we're supposed to be asking ourselves this every day. Am I accomplishing today what I'm meant to be accomplishing today? And also the commentaries point out to us that he uses the expression, the amount of my days, or the measure of my yamai, my days. So when you have a newborn baby, they're 1 day old and 2 days old. Then time spread, they start going by the weeks. Then we start going by the months, right? And once they turn one, we start going by the years. Imagine if for us, someone said, "How old are you?" and you said, "I'm this amount of days," right? Um, we don't. We measure it in years. A tzaddik, on the other hand, measures his life in days. He measures his life in days because he knows that every single day is he's got a job that he needs to accomplish. He knows what he's supposed to be doing on those days. A tzaddik doesn't do like, well, let's just have a day off. Okay, a Sunday. In our house, we like to call them pajama days. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to accomplish anything. Not trying to achieve anything. Don't give myself jobs. Let's just have a day. Okay, and a tzaddik doesn't do that. And why doesn't a tzaddik do that? Because he knows that every single day has a purpose. Every single day something has to be accomplished on that on that day. We have the same thing with Abraham. When the Torah tells us that Abraham was old, it says that Abraham Zakain, he was old, but biyamim, he was coming with his days. So we like to think that's a nice euphemistic way of saying he was old, he's coming with his days. But actually, what we're saying is that Abraham never wasted a day. When he faced Hashem at the end of his however many years, he brought with him every single day. But biyamim, he came with every day because there wasn't a single day that he had a pajama day. On every single day, Abraham accomplished what he needed to accomplish on that day. So here, David HaMelech says, "Tell me when my end will come, and the length of like, and the length of my days, or the measure of my days, and tell me. Then I will also know mechadal ani. Then I will know when the pain will stop." I'm trying to see what I should skip. Okay. Continues, and he says, "Hine tvachos nasati yamai, you gave me handfuls of my day. V'cheldi cha'ai decha, and the time I have is like nothing before you. Ach kol hevel, everything is empty. Kol adam nitzav selah." This is how it is for everyone. Next pasuk, "Ach b'tzelem yishalech ish." Man goes about in a tzelem, and we comment on what that means. Ach hevel yehemoyun, and everything is nothing. Yitzbar v'lo yeda, he gathers and he doesn't know. Mi oisfam, who's going to gather it in. So David HaMelech is saying that we spend our lives, what do we spend our lives doing? Gathering. We gathering and gathering, but we don't even know who's going to benefit from our gathering in the end, right? Who's going to gather it? Famous story in the Gemara of a king called Munbach, who he and his father were very, very, very wealthy, and all of a sudden he started giving tzedakah and giving gifts and giving out his money, and his family was very upset, like, "Hey, keep some for us." And Munbach said, "My father and myself, we gathered money that has to be, and treasures that has to be guarded all the time, and we don't know what will happen to it. I am gathering mitzvahs by giving out these treasures, and the treasure I'm gathering, I know for sure will always be safe." Over here, David HaMelech speaks about living living in a tzelem. So what is a tzelem? So very simple understanding of this pasuk. David HaMelech is saying that we all live in fear of death. Everybody. Ach b'tzelem. So over here, tzelem is referring to death, and so everybody walks thinking about, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I don't really want to die, God forbid. A deeper explanation of tselem is that tselem means, or translates literally, as an image. And there are a few different ways that we can understand what David HaMelech is saying over here. He says, "Ach b'tzelem," I go in this image. So firstly, David HaMelech is pointing out to us that we all have an image that we like to create of ourselves. We want to be seen as something. It's the image that we have created for ourselves. And David HaMelech says, "Ach b'tzelem yishalech ish," we make this image for ourselves. That's what we want to seem like, but we don't even know. Our clamoring to have this image could possibly be worthless. It could be just hevel. So it's one way of understanding this pasuk, or the second way. The third way of understanding this pasuk, ach b'tselem, we all need to have images of something that motivates us or inspires us. So you know that when Yosef Hatzadik was in Egypt and Mrs. Potiphar was enticing him to have an affair, and he was about to. Remember, he was an 18-year-old boy. He was filled with hormones. She had been nagging him for a year. She had been threatening him for a year, and he was about to be with her. And then he saw a picture, an image of his father, and that's what stopped him. And say the commentaries, we all need to have an image in our head which makes us aspire to something greater, to something bigger. Stops us from doing wrong, but helps us also to want to do greater. And finally, the explanation for this is that Tselem is talking about Hashem. We have to remember that we are all created, but Tselem Elokim. We are created in the image of Hashem. And if I remember that at all times, I'll behave in a certain way. If I keep on remembering, I'm not just me, Rifki Chaikin, who can do whatever I want and behave however I like. I contain a little bit of God in me, and I was created in the image of Hashem, and I was given the job of behaving like however, and that has to motivate me to do something more, greater, better with my life. And that's what David HaMelech says. Ach b'tselem yishalech ish. We have to go with all these different images that help us to grow. I'm actually going to skip all the way to the second last pasuk where David HaMelech speaks about. This is pasuk Gimel. He says, "Shema Silasi Hashem, listen to my prayer. V'shav asi ha'azino, and listen to my cry. Ve'eldim asi al techarash, and don't turn away from my tears." My tears. Kiger anochi imach. I'm a stranger with you. Toshav kechol avoisai, and I'm just like all my fathers. I'm not going to go into all the commentary on this passage, just to point out to you the three different ways that David HaMelech suggests to us to connect with Hashem. Tfilasi, prayer, which is probably the hardest. Shavasi, which is crying, something coming from the depths of our insides, and then El Dimasi, and to our tears. And our teachers tell us that the gate of tears is never ever closed. Anytime you want to reach Hashem, that's the gate that will take us straight there. And he finishes off the capital of Tehilim by saying, Hashem imenu, don't harm me, vavliga, let me regain my strength, let me come back to a strong point, before I leave this world and I am gone. This is Perek Lamed Tes in short. I wish you all good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rifki.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rifki.
Thank you.